Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, April 27th, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Thursday, everyone. It is a lovely 70 degrees and very sunny here in upstate New York with a predicted high today of 87. Woo! It's like we went from spring to summer in one quick day. Where do we leave off yesterday? We titled the show AI, Manufacturing Trust, 21st Century Panopticon, and Human Obsolescence. And yeah, we kind of outlined over the last few days how they have been utilizing social engineering, peer pressure, societal quote-unquote norms that they are setting through the media to turn voluntary participation in different programs, different agendas that they are setting. They're able to turn them into quote unquote voluntary participation. They're able to use the pressures of your friends and neighbors and family to take us, resistant consumers, those people who are standing up going, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to sell us? We're questioning the machine, and they're using these people against us. Now, not that they haven't always done that, but at least, in my personal opinion, up until maybe the last 12 years or so, we were still allowed to have a differing opinion. We were still allowed to exercise our dissent. We were still allowed to question the machine and even question the machine loudly, write blogs, stand on boxes, talk to people on street corners, whatever. You didn't get beaten down by a cop or labeled as mentally ill or tagged with a red marker by the alphabet agencies who've been monitoring with their 21st century panopticon all of your communications to determine that you've uttered too many keywords and now you are on the danger list. I mean, that is about where we're at. And really, I have to say that since, and maybe Obama didn't really kick it all into action, because I would say maybe the Bushies, maybe, and we followed a lot of stuff. We went back to energy weapons and the voice of God and some of that crazy stuff back through the Gulf War. And remember Daddy Bush, head of the CIA, was in charge before that. So it is very possible that this has been going on for more than 12 years at this level, but maybe we just didn't know about it. And that's where the panopticon comes in. Because the panopticon, one of the definitions of the panopticon is that people stay in check because they are aware that they are being watched. Ding! So like I said yesterday, these releases, Snowden, WikiLeaks, we're like, wow, all this information's coming out. And yeah, I mean, much of this stuff the common public did not know. So for me, at least in the very beginning, it was kind of like an I told you so moment. All those years I've been out there being Chicken Little and people just laughed at me and told me to go put my hat back on, the tinfoil one. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned this. My friend and I were joking around back a few weeks ago when we were covering all of that microwave weaponry and stuff for mind control on this show. And I did a quick search to see if there were tinfoil hats out there or instructions how to make them, if there's anything special he had to do. And some really entrepreneurial person has created an item that they've put onto Amazon. And yes, it is a tinfoil hat, and it's folded. It says it's handcrafted, and it's folded for shipment, and it's adjustable size. And somebody is selling an actual tinfoil hat for $14 on Amazon, and there were only 2 left in stock the last time I looked. But like, how hysterical is that? I'll have to link to that in the notes. But anyway, back to this panopticon and the surveillance state. I mean, once they announced with these quote unquote leaks and whistleblowers that this stuff was going on, it no longer was a surprise to everyone. And now we all know that we are being surveilled and we are officially, again, in a panopticon. It says the relevance of the panopticon as a metaphor begins to wither when we start thinking about whether contemporary types of visuality, effectively digital and data-driven data, are analogous to the central tower concept of the panopticon. See, back when they first created that concept, it was used in prisons. And I mentioned this yesterday, where it was the central tower with 360-degree visibility, and then all the prisoners were down below, and they could watch and attack or whatever from up above in a full spectrum awareness. Well, that's where we're at now. Add all this technology, and like I've talked about before, the Space Command of the Air Force and all of these space laser weapons and Star Wars-esque type technology that's going up there. That is pretty much what they've done. They have now put the tower into space. The tower is now looking down on planet Earth, and they can target a fly on a bumper with some sort of high pulsed energy weapon. We are at that point now. And guys, we think, this is talk of lunacy. But I'm going to warn you, we're just getting to this point now where we're integrating the Internet of Things now to all of this military-industrial complex. We're also working on cracking all the secrets of the brain, or as many as we possibly can, and trying to create weaponry. Of course, it's all in the name of cures, but remember, everything out of DARPA and the Department of Defense is about weaponry. So yeah, it might be to cure Johnny's PTSD after you sent him into battle. But I hate to tell you, it's also going to be to go after, Kim Jong, whatever. I was going to say ill or ool, but I was trying to come up with another North Korean name, but I don't know any. Kim Jong X. It's also going to be to go after Kim Jong X's mental state at some point, to be able to make him go crazy or see bugs or hear noises in his head, to take out your enemy remotely. And I know it sounds lunatic, but it's not, guys. This is something that we have dug deep. I'm trying to remember. We have Bell Labs and some of the microwave technologies that they were developing for communications technology. And then we found out a lot of those same technologies can be used to beam voices into your head and to manipulate brain waves and do all kinds of crazy things. And there was experiment after experiment, voice to skull technology. And then we even found potential uses of those technologies in the battlefield. So now let's fast forward. I mean, that was back in the 90s. Let's fast forward another 10, 20 years into the future. Bing, here we are with the Internet of Things and the Brain Initiative and precision medicine and DNA sequencing all being the science du jour, the coming of the 21st century. Let's get rid of all of the supposed FDA protections that weren't really there to begin with the 21st Century Cures Act. Let's give every one of these rich tech billionaires that are searching for the fountain of youth the ability to test their creations on the American public who willingly step up and open their arms because they've been groomed. And if they haven't been groomed, we're going to use social pressure on them and some high-impact advertising. Go for the heart. Tell them you'll save Nana. They'll step up for those nanobots. And all this is coming together all at one time. We've talked about disruptive technologies before and how usually in a generation you had one, maybe two, that would take that chessboard and just knock it off, and you'd have to start all over again. You'd have to rebuild it all. But we are at a point now where we have 10, 12, 15 disruptive technologies that are all coming at us in the same period of time. We heard Jack Ma yesterday. Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, which is the Chinese version of Amazon meets Google, apparently. I had no idea that Alibaba was getting into artificial intelligence now and supercomputing. But Jack Ma had warned that the future is going to be loaded with pain. We have people like Elon Musk warning, the future is going to be loaded with autonomous robots that want to take us out. We have PricewaterhouseCoopers doing studies of the public to see what the public adoption rate might be if they stepped right in with AI today. And we find out that 72% of all business makers are ready to embrace it. 22% of people, though, consumers, are willing to embrace an AI doctor. And I really think we need to help people understand the dangers, because it's what's going on right now. Nobody is understanding the future dangers. The fact that we are handing over the control of everything. And I mean, right now, AI isn't controlling the world, but they are already kind of sticking the toe in the water for, what would an AI government be like? And yes, humans have emotions and make bad decisions, so don't worry about it because we have a solution. That's really where now the social engineering is grooming us and kind of steering us toward. And remember yesterday, I mentioned it a whole bunch of times, how it's like funneling us down to that one single lane hallway that they send all the cows to as they're heading for the meat saw. Except you don't see the meat saw until you get around that bend. We're going down there right now. We don't even hear the screams because they have sound dampening equipment. You know, all that newfangled sonic technology. They can do white noise. Psh, you'll never even hear it. Speaking of brains and manipulation, I had to just read this one. I wasn't going to, but I have to because we've talked about mini brain balls a whole bunch of times. And I ran across a headline yesterday that caught my attention. Scientists, remember those mini brain balls, you scraped your skin cells and you mix them up with a chemical cocktail, and they were able to make those pluripotent iPS stem cells from your skin cells that they can then turn into any cell in the body. And they're even better than embryonic stem cells, because embryonic stem cells, they still have an issue with turning off the growth factor. But in these, they don't seem to have that problem. But they can make these any organ, any tissue in the body to then hopefully in the future, and like I've said, out of all of these mad science technologies, these iPS stem cells are probably the ones that if I had to put $1 on a horse, it would be this one, for a technology that has really great potential for healing in the future. Be like a little patch, like when your waterbed gets a hole and just a little bit of glue and put some more of that sticky plastic on top of it, or your pool or whatever, and it seals it right up, seals up the air leak, the water leak. It's like magic. Well, that's what these iPS stem cells are. It just scrapes the skin off your hand, doesn't hurt Johnny at all. We mix it up with our chemical cocktail. They do some sort of little genetic modification, but it's your own cells. They get them to start reproducing, coax them into the right direction of whatever bodily system they need. Then they put them in you and they start healing things. Well, they've been messing around with these for a lot of different organ systems, but one in particular is the brain. We've been following this one. Will be the third story about mini brain balls that we've read over the last year or so. Well, here's one. This came out of Wired.com, dated yesterday, April 26, 2017. Scientists brew up the creepiest batch of brain balls yet. Now, when I read that, I literally had the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Because, what is a creepy batch of brain balls? And what is the creepiest batch yet of creepy brain balls? It's really got to make you wonder. If you remember, they were talking about at one point using these brain balls to bring back brain dead patients who've been in a coma for a long period of time, had been clinically determined to be brain dead, were still on the machine, and they were going to take like 12 or 15 of those people and quietly shuffle them off to India, one of our mad offshore science departments, and inject their brains with mini brain balls to see if they could wake them back up. Now that test, thank goodness, no offense to any of the families whose, family members they were maybe going to try this treatment on, but first of all, if they were me, they were in a coma, I don't think I'd want someone waking me up after years of being quote-unquote brain dead with mini brain balls as part of a science experiment in some underground scary Indian lab, okay, just to see what would happen. No, thank you. I make this my official statement right now. No mini brain balls for me. But number two, talk about ethical issues. We're literally talking about manipulating the brain, consciousness, and yeah, it's all in the name of science. But we're talking Frankenstein science at this point. We're talking God science. We're talking science that comes with it all of the dangers of being gods. And these people don't have morals. They don't have ethics. We've determined that. Neither do robots. Yet we are giving them the powers to create and to take life. Now, they've always had the power to take life. We've always had the power to create life naturally. But we are at the point now where we are able to create and take life with the flick of a fingertip, with a sneeze, with an accidental pushing of a button. Whoops. In the pushing of the button, yeah, they've had weapons of mass destruction for a long time with the push of a button. But with the push of a button now, whoops, the genetically modified, CRISPRed plague that just accidentally got out happened because someone spilled a Coke on the control board, that's literally where we are now. So anyway, scientists brew up the creepiest back to brain balls yet. Stem cell biologists, this is all part of this brain project, so thanks, Obama. Stem cell biologists are basically modern day witches, and that's what the story starts with. And I would have to second that. And while they are not exactly talking a creepy fetal Lord Voldemort and turning him into a noseless Ralph Fiennes, which I have no idea what that is, but maybe they're talking about, that sounds like a Harry Potter reference. These scientists can use tinctures and concoctions to grow incredible things from just a few human skin cells. Ding, ding, these are these IPS. One of those things is a mini brain ball, a collection of stem cells that biologists have coaxed into a bobbling tangle of living neurons. And these little spheres, remember DARPA's been playing with these as well, these little spheres can grow and change, and the neurons inside reaching out arm-like appendages as they move around. It is actually creepy and mesmerizing. This is in a petri dish. And remember, when we first heard this story, they had actually talked about these are brains. They're real brains. They are real neurons. The only problem is that we didn't have any sensory input. They didn't have any VPUs or GPUs, graphical processing units, visual processing units, i.e. robot googly eyes. But, don't think that isn't going to be in the future. We saw a video way back when, and it might be gone now from one of Pigmine's channels. It might have been taken down, but it was on Pigmine. He had this robot. It was a Lego robot that one of the news agencies had done a story on, and they took brain cells from a worm, and they put them into this Lego robot, and they set it in a room, and every time it would bump into the wall, it would just keep bumping into the wall. But after a period of time, it learned that after bumping into the wall, if it turned, it could keep going. And these worm brain cells started to respond to its environment. But these are worm brain cells inside of a robot body. So let's just extrapolate just a little bit. So they were doing that research probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, that the mainstream media had done a report on that. Now let's fast forward to these last couple years that we've been messing with mini brain balls in a petri dish in a lab. And remember, a lot of these scientists, even if they didn't get FDA approval, they've been using themselves as the experiment. So they've been taking their own stem cells. One of those stories we read about, the scientist had actually made mini brain balls out of his own skin cells and started experimenting. So, what is the reach for me to think, just with how robotics has been moving along here over the last couple of years, they haven't already taken some of these mini brain balls that all they need now are sensory input and put them into some sort of little robotic body, especially considering the number of robot companies that DARPA and military defense contractors and places like Google already have. And a lot of them are even humanoid. You know, that 2045 project that now is merged with Kurzweil's project of living forever and merging with the machine and transcendence and transhumanism. You know, all those projects have kind of merged together, merging science, biology, and technology. We even have DARPA has now their BTO, their Biological Technology Office, that's all about merging man and machine. The whole super soldier program, that's what it's about as well. So, guys, I don't think that's too much of a stretch of the imagination. So if they're already making brains that could think and grow neurons, and they already were putting worm neurons into robots and having them react to their environment, what do you want to bet that they already have little robots in a back room somewhere with real human little mini brain balls that are doing the thinking and the learning? I don't know, just a postulation, but I'm telling you, I don't think that is even a stretch of science fiction. That is real time today, that it can be done, and we have that technology. Anyway, so it's creepy and mesmerizing, and today, in two separate covens, they say, lab groups, they report new brain ball recipes. One group, led by stem cell biologist Paola Arlotta at Harvard University, tweaked an existing recipe and figured out exactly which types of neurons show up in a sphere left to its own devices. The other, led by neuroscientist Sergiu Pasca at Stanford University, showed that they could fuse multiple brain balls together, oh God, allowing intermixing neuron types that are born in different parts of the brain. So we can merge multiple mini brain balls to make a big networked mini brain ball of different neuronal types, all made to order. I mean, guys, we really think like all this other tech we've talked about is like dangerous and scary, but what about if we can make artificial brains and program them, train them, groom them to be whatever we want, and then put them into some sort of mechanical body that doesn't have the limitations of biology? And this is even scarier than Atlas robots and AI. This is like real biological thinking tools that can kick AI's ass at a lot of the different things that humans do that machines cannot yet. Says this is a step toward witnessing and manipulating human brain development, and just maybe it'll give them a leg up in preventing diseases like autism. Of course, it's all in the name of curing disease. The first brain balls were born just a few years ago. They basically were stem cells that scientists had teased into neurons using chemical prods like growth factor and receptor inhibitors. And when they are left to float in a sugar and a salt solution, they simultaneously and spontaneously assemble into little round blobs. At first, they were relatively crude representations of real brains, useful mostly for studying diseases of abnormal brain size, like what? Oh, microencephaly, that of course was caused by the Zika virus. So is this? Are they literally saying that mini brain balls came out of trying to cure microencephaly because of the quote unquote Zika pandemic? I think they are. For things such as Zika, mini brain balls were ideal because you could actually see that the spheres were physically smaller, says Kristen Brennard, a stem cell scientist at Mount Sinai, who was not involved in these studies. At the time, people weren't so sure that these would be useful for studying anything more than subtle brain defects like those in autism, but researchers had grander ambitions. Of course they did. They wanted to be gods. And they thought that by growing these mini brain balls, which they call whole brain organoids, for longer periods of time, they might be able to get more kinds of cells to grow. And instead of directing the cells toward a particular fate with specialized chemicals, they just let the brain balls grow unsupervised, sometimes for almost a year, and figured out afterward what kinds of cells they made. So, all right, let's understand what we just read. So, they are CRISPRing embryos, but they've put rules that you gotta, at least if you're in the United States, you can only let it grow for so many days, and then you have to kill it. They've also been working, I think it was in Harvard, a couple of these big universities again, they're getting all kinds of sprinkle funding. They were mixing pig cells into human cells to grow human pig hybrids that potentially in the future could grow replacement organs for people who needed transplants. We've also used this stem cell research, same one that they're making mini brain balls, to grow livers and kidneys and vocal cords, all these other body parts that they could then spray with inkjet nozzles on a scaffold, and they turn into living organs. But now we've taken it just one step further. We have made these mini brain balls out of stem cells, and we put them into a petri dish and let them grow unsupervised for almost a year, and found out, they made all kinds of differentiated cells. And the variety was, frankly, a little bit creepy. There were neurons, like the ones in our cortex, but also neurons that had telltale signs of being part of the olfactory system, and that would be, again, some sensory input, ones that we could smell with. And worst of all, they also developed neurons from the eye. So, guys, that was the problem before. There was no sensory input in these little mini brain balls. We couldn't see, hear, taste, smell, any of that stuff. But guess what? When they let them grow unsupervised, those specialized neurons grew all by themselves. And don't worry about it, because these brain balls can't exactly see or smell. And if you turn out the light, the brain balls do actually fire off electrical signals so they can differentiate by things from light to dark. And they conclude that these brain organoids can, quote, support self-organized patterns of activity. You know, sort of like real brains. And that's exciting because it means, and that's them, that's not me, because that means that they could use these mini brains to study how different types of neurons connect to one another. And guys, all I gotta say is that we are crossing into realms that are beyond science fiction. We are now in the scary science fiction section of the VHS library, ones that you don't want to watch in the dark before you are going to sleep, where they are talking about literally creating mini living brains of human beings. So the mini brain ball is a dramatic simplification of the human brain, but hey, it allows for all kinds of experimentation. And scientists don't know for sure that the migration defect causes behavioral changes in people yet, which must be something I skipped over a bunch of paragraphs. But there must be some sort of issue that they have discovered so far. But they are optimistic that they'll be able to scale up their brain balls, growing neural spheroids for many different patients, i.e. creating a brain ball farm. We're going to farm brain balls now to be able to screen for drugs that set development down more of a normal path. In a way, it doesn't matter if the brain balls are perfect models or not, if they can be streamlined as a tool for treatments. Now, people, this is again cracking the chinks in the human armor, understanding the human brain, and not only understanding the human brain to quote unquote cure disease, because of course that's how they're going to sell it to you, but understanding the human brain so they can create a better one. Understanding the human brain so they can create an artificially intelligent machine that thinks a hell of a lot like humans. And that is the end game. They are trying to recreate a synthetic version of the human brain. And yes, I know that they keep telling us that it's all in the name of curing you. And I'm sure the 21st Century Cures Act is going to cover treatments with little mini brain ball technologies. But I'd be running away screaming. Now, we talked a lot about AI. AI is rolling out everywhere. I'm sure in the future we're going to have AI creating little mini brain balls on an assembly line. We already found out that there is a cell production facility. I believe it is being done with, I want to say the Weiss Institute, but I don't think it was the Weiss Institute. It was one of the Harvard groups that was related directly to Georgie Porgy Church, and they got big DARPA funding, and they have created a new biological manufacturing facility in Maryland. I think it was a $300 million grant that they got to kick that puppy off. And they are putting this stuff on an assembly line to be able to manufacture life on the fly. And remember the DARPA lady way back when they talked about using some of these technologies to terraform Mars, but they were going to experiment with it here on Earth. But it's really spun beyond that. Now it's going to be experimenting on all of us. And of course, as artificial intelligence starts to work its way into all of the different corporations and business segments out there, we found out 74% of all interviewed business leaders are willing to embrace AI. And by 2020, 47% of all jobs in the United States are going to be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence. That's only 2.5 years away. So what's going to happen? Well, they've pulled out that universal basic income card. And remember, universal basic income means sitting around being pretty, doing nothing except thinking and artistic pursuits because there's nothing left to do while they pay you money. People think there's a free lunch, and there isn't, guys. And part of what I think is happening is we are being sold to the pharma companies. We are being sold as the guinea pigs. That's what's going to allow you to stay alive. Is if you step right up, you can get your universal basic income if you give us your DNA swab. If you take your soma to keep yourself tamped down there, Johnny, you put in that little neural Fitbit of the nervous system by DARPA and Berkeley to allow us to monitor you 24/7 as part of our new 21st Century Panopticon to make sure you don't get out of line, but to make sure you stay healthy as well. So they just discussed universal basic income at the TED conference. And, in the very beginning, there were some places globally that were for this, and some who were against it, and some who were talking about it, and some who wanted to implement it. In Ontario, this summer, they're getting ready to start implementing their first test run of universal basic income. And now at the TED conference, 16 hours ago, a story came out. Basic income just got a standing ovation at TED. Universal basic income, a system of wealth distribution that involves giving people a monthly wage just for being alive. Ding! Just got a standing ovation at this year's TED conference. I mean, it really's got to make you wonder, did they intentionally breed hard work? and work ethic out of us over these last 3 generations to make us lazy, fat, sick, and dumb. So much so that we would be willing to step up and say, hey, governments, just hand me money to do nothing, and we don't think you're doing anything out of the ordinary. We don't think that we are becoming obsolete. Oh, no, let's let the robots do all the work. I mean, are we really that naive to believe this narrative that they're just going to pay us forever for doing nothing? And one thing that I was reading about is that this literally is going to take that income gap right now that we've already been screaming about for the last how many, 10 years, about the 99% versus the 1%. But this is going to take like the 99.75% now and put them into this lower class that has no say. You are going to be completely dependent on the machine for every part of your sustenance. Rutger Bregman, a Dutch historian and basic income advocate, gave a talk on the subject in which he explored a crucial question. Why do the poor make such poor decisions? Well, poverty is not a character flaw, he explained. People in poverty tend to eat less healthily. Yeah, because you can't afford anything that's not genetically modified anymore. And save less money because, right, you got to eat, you got to have a roof over your head. And do drugs more often, right, because they are very depressed and don't see any reason to live as they are getting stomped on a daily basis by the forward-moving society who doesn't give two shits about them because they just don't have their basic needs met. Bregman suggested that creating a system of basic income would be the quickest and easiest way to meet all of those needs. Poverty is not a lack of character. Poverty is a lack of cash, he said, before the TED crowd of 1,000+ rose to its feet. Bregman's standing ovation reflects the particular appeal that basic income is gaining among American technologists. People in Silicon Valley who are working on building autonomous robots that could replace human labor are all for this. But as economists have started speculating about the ways that these innovations could lead to widespread unemployment, like I said, PricewaterhouseCoopers study established yesterday 47% of all American jobs in the next 2.5 years will be gone. Many tech elites have begun searching for solutions to the problem that they are creating. Tesla CEO Elon Musk, Y Combinator President Sam Altman, Facebook co-founder Chris Hughes have all endorsed basic income. On Twitter, venture capitalist Chris Sacca remarked that Bregman's talk was, quote, devastatingly provocative and enlightening. Basic income has gained new life in the last few years, and it has started as a niche economic theory in the late 1960s, promoted by Milton Friedman. But is that the Milton Friedman? Is that like the voice of God, Milton Friedman? I'm not quite so sure about that. But a wave of basic income trials around the world has propelled the idea toward the mainstream. And Camille had sent me a story. I think it was a list, and I don't have that handy right now. But it was something that Corbett had done, listing out all the countries that are moving forward toward universal basic income. And the list was quite long already, or maybe that was universal IDs. But universal IDs and universal basic income are all part of the same panopticon. You're going to have some sort of digital ID, whether it be a card, a DNA swab, or an implanted neural chip of some kind. You can have your superpowers, wave your hands, open a door, and get your check in your digital account. According to Bregman, we already have the means, the research, and the need for basic income. All that is left is the action. And judging by the reaction to Bregman's talk, the TED crowd seems ready to agree. Experiments are currently underway in Finland, Kenya, and Oakland, California, and new ones are expected to launch later this year in the Netherlands and in Canada. And that is the one that I was just talking about in Ontario. And I think I heard Ron, Game On, Rock the Boat Ron, talking about this very thing on his show on Tuesday. So now let's take another step forward down the scary, dark hallway. Because as we have all this stuff going on, we have the robots coming to take all of our jobs. We have IBM Watson taking on all kinds of new positions as he is reading 1 million pages a minute. He's learning to be an oncologist. He's learning to be tech support. He's learning to be a lawyer. Now they are creating smart apps for AI doctors. So all you got to do is sneeze into your phone or talk into your phone and diagnose disease. There's a new one out called Babylon Health. Interesting name. Babylon Health raises a further $60 million to continue building out its AI doctor app. This was posted April 25th, 2017. Babylon Health, a UK startup that offers digital healthcare applications using a mixture of artificial intelligence, video, and text consultations, has raised an additional $60 million in new funding. The company says that it plans to use this new capital to build out its AI capabilities, including offering diagnosis by AI rather than a more simple triage functionality, which is pegged to roll out later this year. Babylon's previous investors included a lot of huge venture capitalist funds, and earlier this year they began working with a number of health authorities in London to trial its AI-powered chatbot triage and rolling it out to patients. As of July of last year, the company has provided medical advice to up to 250,000 people to date. Now, guys, it is surely coming. They are really pushing this. It is going to be AI doctor. This is going to be the solution to healthcare being too expensive. This is going to be the solution to 47% of Americans not having jobs. We're all going to be digitized and monitored, and we're going to keep you healthy. Don't worry about it. And because you don't have a job, you don't feel important as a human anymore. So we will just make sure you don't end up with depression. Talking to your smartphone, Johnny. We'll be able to fix you up. No problem. There's an Israeli company. If I can find this, I ran across this yesterday, brand new story titled Beyond Verbal. I actually ran across them in a different story about voice analysis technology could diagnose disease, and they mentioned this company called Beyond Verbal. I went to their website. Ends up they are from Israel, where a lot of this emotion scanning technology seems to be coming out of. And they are dubbed Beyond Verbal the emotional analytics company, analyzing emotions from vocal intonations. Why go beyond the verbal? Well, emotions drive everything we do, yet voice-driven emotion analytics remains the most important unexplored interface today. Beyond Verbal is committed to changing that. Emotional analytics and you. Well, you could use it to do market research. You could use it to determine wellness by your little Fitbit-esque watch. And we could use it as a mental health research platform. Ding, 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 ding. Now, this is this next step. We're in the 21st Century Cures Act. They mention neurological non-invasive surveillance. And I really think that this is where we are headed. Remember, mental disorders on a spectrum. And all kinds of brain research going into ways to zippity-zap, different areas of the brain to fix chemical compositions that might be causing your depression or your PTSD. Guys, once they have cracked all the secrets of the brain, and I am sure that a lot of this stuff, they are already manipulating mini brain balls to see what happens. Once they've cracked all these secrets, we have no more secrets. Once they crack all these secrets, we have no more autonomy. And I don't know today if we're going to be able to get to this document. I found the scariest document ever yesterday that goes through all of these different new technologies that the DoD is working on for being able to manipulate brains to use against, of course, the enemy as a part of warfare. But maybe we'll get there. That's where we'll kick it off, and we'll do that for Friday. Anyway, back to this Beyond Verbal Israeli company. So let's explore their features. So they have something called valence, and that is a variable ranging from negativity to positivity. When listening to a person talk, it is possible to understand how quote-unquote positive or quote-unquote negative they feel about a subject, object, or even an event under discussion. There's another feature called arousal, and that is a variable that ranges from tranquility or boredom to alertness and excitement. It corresponds to similar concepts such as levels of activation and stimulation. Number 3, another feature that they can detect would be tempers, an emotional measure that covers a speaker's entire mood range. Low temper describes depressive and gloomy moods. It means they need a zippity zap. And a medium temper describes friendly, warm, and embracive moods, but a high temper describes confrontational, domineering, and aggressive moods, and those are the people, and I'm adding this, that need to be subdued. Do you see where this is heading? And this could be ubiquitous at some point in the future. This could be integrated right into your computer back end. You know, we already found out that Google has had a patent for a long time to be able to open your microphone on the back end of your computer and gather information and language that is being talked about in the very room, to use that to then send targeted advertising to you. How long is it going to be? And like I'm going to say, just because we don't know about it yet doesn't mean it's not happening. How long is it going to be before they implement something like this, especially from an Israeli company, another mad science offshore lab country, where they'll be able, we'll have NSA, doing red flag, boop, 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 look, Jewel has reached a high temper level. As she's doing her show, she needs to be anesthetized, I mean, that's not beyond the realm of science fiction. So why should you consider emotional analytics? I'm reading their cut sheet. Emotional analytics change the way we interact with our machines and ourselves forever. And that is very true. This is going to change our world forever. You will not be able to hide how you feel. It used to be lie detector tests, and they'd hook you up to blood pressure and breathing and ask you questions. And there are some people who are really good at faking out the lie detector machine. They could keep a very focused response rate to not give away what they were thinking or feeling. These will be the people who are the good poker players, who can keep a poker face. But then we found out there was a company out there that was using micro expressions and artificial intelligence to be able to read those very fine little twitches that you might get when you are lying on your face, or bodily movements that only professional law enforcement or psychiatrists, psychologists have been trained to recognize. But now they could do that with computer vision at an airport or in a police department, ask you questions and detect your micro emotions. Take that the next step further now. Not only are they detecting your micro emotions, we also read a story the other day about them just being able to determine by your bodily gait and how you're walking or moving as to whether or not you're being free and open or if you're hiding something. They also determined that they are able to see in a child by behavior as early as 3 years old. We read that story quite a few months ago, toddlers, as to whether or not in the future you are going to be a problem person that may, in the future, be a burden to our society because of your deviant behavior that makes you a troublemaker. We've also found that they have tools now with fMRI. They can literally suck your dreams and your thoughts right out of your head to know what you were thinking. And MIT has developed a technology using Wi-Fi, literal Wi-Fi that we all have in our homes, to read the emotions of the people in the room remotely. None of that is science fiction anymore, people. We have covered stories about all that stuff. Well, now they can just take the sound of your voice, no matter where it is, whether it's in a room, talking to a friend, on a cell phone, on Skype, and determine what your emotions are, and eventually whether or not they consider you a danger and mentally ill. So yes, this will be changing us forever. You're going to have a language and blinks. And finger. I mean, maybe we should all start learning sign language again. I used to know it when I was a kid. They taught us that. Maybe I learned it myself. Maybe it was in Girl Scouts. I learned sign language. But this is beyond frightening. And people like me who tend to talk in an animated fashion, I get really excited about things. Doesn't mean I'm dangerous. Doesn't mean I'm agitated. It just means I'm excited. And I like about stuff like this. And I like to express that with my hand movements, which I'm jerking. If you guys could see me here, you'd see my hands. You remember when I used to do ponytail cam? You'd always see the ponytail flopping around in the camera. It's because I'm animated. But it doesn't mean I'm dangerous. It just means I'm excited about something. But, what would they literally come back with if they took 10 minutes of my almost 500 shows up on YouTube and ran it through an analyzer? Well, I almost fell into that yesterday. This website, somewhere in here when I first went out, a little thing popped up for me to try out their research to see what kind of a mood I was in to talk for 30 seconds or something into a microphone and let them record it. And I was like, oh, what they literally are doing by offering a free example, it says right here, 2.3 million voice samples from 170 countries, 8 patents, and 21 years of research that they already own in their database. So every time somebody steps up, uses their app, downloads it, and it's free on the App Store, or even tries their little test, you are feeding their emotional analytics machine. By decoding human vocal intonations into their underlying emotions in real time, emotion analytics enables voice-powered devices, applications, and solutions to interact with us on an emotional level, just as humans do. And that is another thing that we read about quite a long time ago, that they were already teaching artificial intelligence to be able to react to us based upon the emotions that we were outputting and to understand those and then respond. They are attempting to integrate AI into these analytic software devices and use them for all kinds of interesting things. So be the first to download our new application called Mood Call. And there's a guy holding his phone with little smiley faces that reminds me of the Doctor Who episode that I just was talking about the other day. They have a little green one on his one shoulder that has like a straight mouth. It looks just kind of neutral. They have a little yellow one on the guy's other shoulder with a big happy laughing smiley face. And they have a little red one with a crinkle face on him down next to his other shoulder down below. And then a cry blue one on the other side. And the application says, I was very happy with a big smiley yellow face. Mood call, stay happy. And talk about like dumbing down the population that anyone would think that this was a great download. Let's download. Track how friends or family make you feel during phone calls. Well, hey, guess what? Now you can with Mood Call from Israel. Mood Analytics. Analyze the following emotions: happy, sad, angry, and neutral. Track and share. The coolest feature is that you not only get an immediate analysis of your phone calls, we now have a tool to monitor how specific people make you feel over a period of time, whether it is a day, a week, or a month. And then you can share this on social media with your friends and your loved ones. Beyond Verbal is a world leader in voice-driven emotion analytics and has developed a new Android application which enables you yourself, to embrace the machine and monitor how phone calls affect your mood. Now, come on, guys. We've talked about the mental health diagnostic apps through your voice patterns. That good old Tommy Insel was talking about, the former director of the National Institute of Mental Health, who has moved over to Google to try to diagnose mental disease on a spectrum with smartphone applications as well as treatments. Now, remember, we have this big conglomerate research group that we covered back probably a year plus ago between the U.S. and Israel in neurobiology. Guys, this is no accident that all of this stuff is coming out of Tel Aviv. The application is automatically triggered by phone calls during your conversation. Beyond Verbal's emotional analytics engine collects just 13 seconds of your speech to render an emotional analysis. The longer you talk, the more emotions are being analyzed. And the application only analyzes your emotions and not the emotions of others, so you can tell how the conversation made you feel. All right, guys, make sure you stick around. I will catch up with you tomorrow. Everybody take care.
My name is S.M. Gibson, and